Even a man who is pure in heart and says his prayers by night may become a wolf when the wolfbane blooms and the autumn moon is bright.
Gummy bears bouncing here and there and everywhere.
To a new world of gods and monsters.
It began in May, and every month after that, whenever the moon was full, it happened again. And again.
What was that? It's over there. Don't point that at me.
Nobody knew who or what was responsible.
Come on.
They only knew it had to be stopped. Now, from the master of mystery and suspense, Stephen King's Silver Bullet, the last glimmering hope.
Hello, all you horror junkies, and welcome to Scarifyer. I'm your host, the Gov.
And I'm Quinn.
Obligatory call to action in 3, 2.
So before we jump into our episode, we want to hear from you guys. Jump on Twitter. We are Scarifyer Pod. So if you look up at Scarifyer Pod, we are on Twitter all the time. Give us a shout. Let us know what you think, what you want to hear, or just chat with us. We are always willing to hear and talk to you guys.
But right now, we are serving up some private justice with 1985 Stephen King's Silver Bullet.
A classic.
It's about time we get another werewolf film on this show.
A good werewolf film.
Mm-hmm.
Gov, would you like to give us the background of this Stephen King classic?
As always. Filming began in October 1984 and took about 2.5 months to complete. The screenplay was written by Stephen King, adapted from his novella Cycle of the Werewolf. In the novella, the werewolf was said to snarl in nearly human words, and the werewolf was supposed to speak in the original screenplay, although this was eliminated after a rewrite. Gary Busey felt a certain kinship with the Uncle Red character and was allowed to ad-lib all of his lines in certain takes of each scene in which he appeared. Although he read the lines as scripted in most of the takes, Stephen King and director Daniel Attias liked the ad-lib scenes better and decided to include most of Busey's ad-lib scenes in the final cut of the film. Silver Bullet was released on October 11th, 1985, making $12.4 million on its $7 million budget. The film received mixed reviews upon release, but gained a cult following after many showings on television during the Halloween season.
So, was it a made-for-TV movie, or was it a wide release?
No, it was a Paramount release, and it just got mixed reviews upon critics. It wasn't a smash hit,
But it wasn't hated either.
No, and actually, I just want to.
It was one of those meh films.
It's actually quite remarkable. This film, in the lexicon of Stephen King films, this one I feel like is the more forgotten one.
No, it is. Do you know how many people when I talk about this film, they have no idea that this is Stephen King?
It was kind of a quiet came and went, even though he wrote the screenplay for it.
Right.
It doesn't really get brought up when you talk about Stephen King films. Everyone can talk about until they're blue in the face The Shining, even though King didn't even like that one. The Kubrick film, I mean, not the made-for-TV remake. Carrie, De Palma's film. Pet Sematary even. Salem's Lot. You name it. most of them get brought up way more than Silver Bullet does.
But I also feel like this is because I think this is one of two reasons that is. I think one reason is because it was a time when horror, especially Stephen King novellas or books were just being pumped out into film. They were just throwing names out there. So at that point, it was kind of almost like, I don't want to say like numbing, but do you know what I mean?
There was a lot.
Oh,
of them.
here's another one and another one.
Well,
that type idea.
I mean, in the late 70s, early 80s, Stephen King properties were kind of like comic books today.
Yeah, that's my
Every
point.
studio bought the intellectual properties.
Exactly. That's what my point is. Do
So
you know
no
what
matter
I mean?
what they could get their hands on of a Stephen King after Carrie came out, that was it.
Exactly. So it's, in my opinion, I mean, I wasn't there when it happened, but I imagine it could just have been something like, it's another Stephen King property. Okay. The other thing, I feel like this is kind of buried when it comes to Stephen King properties, because more people revere this as a Corey Haim film.
I mean, kinda. And I can see why. It's almost like you got the two horror Haim films when it's Lost Boys and this. He did vampires and he did werewolves.
So he got to do both ends of the spectrum, I think.
But one is much more talked about than the other.
Again, I think it was one of those films that just kind of got swept under.
I mean, I agree. Although I can say that my backstory was accurate, especially with the multiple showings during Halloween season, because growing up, this was one of the films I would often catch on cable.
Right, yeah.
And that's how I got really, introduced to it, and just multiple TV watchings. And then I ended up, getting the Shout Factory Blu-ray, and, I enjoy the film. I think it is.
I think it's a lot of fun.
I don't think it's like a blemish on the werewolf genre or subgenre. I think it should be a little bit more appreciated than it is, and I understand people have problems with it.
Right, but as far as like cult films, it is very highly regarded.
It is.
Because it is one of those underground gems, especially if you are a hardcore Stephen King junkie. You'll know about this film, but you'll also know that it wasn't one of those things that was at the top of the list.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think that it is a cult gem in its own right, to be fair.
I will say this. You said that this comes off more as a Corey Haim film. I don't know if I agree 100% with that.
Okay.
Only because
Explain.
I don't know. It doesn't really have that kind of Lucas vibe. Like, that's what I consider like the
Lucas vibe.
Yeah, that's what I consider like the quintessential Corey Haim film. Or even like any of the Corey films or License to Drive, and I don't really put it up. I feel like
that was more like teen drama though, or teen comedy.
Yeah, no, I get that, but I don't know. I guess I never really classified it as that. I always made the connection again, like Corey Haim does horror, so it's this and Lost Boys. But I never really associated like, oh, it's a Corey Haim film. I feel like it's more of a Gary Busey film, if I was to be totally honest.
He's not in it that much though, so how can you?
Ooh, Gary Busey?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I understand that the plot is, well, it's kind of interesting. Well, the film is told in a third-person narrative, as told by an adult Jane Coleslaw. Yes, Coleslaw is the last name of this family. Telling pretty much the story about her and her handicapped brother, Marty, played by Corey Haim, and how they almost, I guess, grew together, or like grew to appreciate and or love each other through this horrific event of a werewolf attacking their small town.
Nothing like trauma to bring them together.
Exactly. But the interesting aspect is a lot of what happens in this movie, there's no way, unless Marty told her years later in explicit detail about things that happened, because like things that happened to the town people or things that happened to Marty, she is nowhere to be found in any of this.
No, she's nowhere to be found, but
the movie's told almost through either Marty's eyes or Reverend Lowe's eyes.
yeah, but on the other, okay, the Reverend I can't even speak for, but as far as Marty is concerned and she's telling that story, it could be something that he told her.
I know, but like again, just some of the scenes that they're not even privy to or a part of, they just know in explicit detail. I do feel like this is more of a Gary Busey film because he's all over this film and he's kind of the standout character. As I said, he felt a kinship to this Uncle Red character. To me, he's got the best lines. He's got the best one-liners in this film. I feel like a virgin on prom night. It's great.
Well, and I think that's another reason why they kind of let him go on this film and do his own material because it was perfect.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the thing, you know, because I think if it was too structured, it kind of would have come across maybe stiff type ideas. So I think it was good to kind of give him a little bit more room to do his own thing.
Mm-hmm. So Reverend Lowe, spoiler alert, is our werewolf. A reverend as the werewolf. Interesting choice. But I never really understood his point of view. Like, at one moment in the film, I think I got it. I'm like, okay, classic tortured tragedy story of a man who's forcibly turning into a beast at night. And then it seems like he almost likes it. So he kind of jumps back and forth between, like, he's tortured and he's having all these dreams about his, sermons, everyone in the church turning into werewolves and attacking him. And then he feels like he's doing God's work by, like, killing these people before they sin.
Well, here's the whole point of it. The whole point of it is supposed to be he is trying to fight it and he hates it. But the more often he turns into the werewolf, the more he's losing his sanity. That's the thing. He loses his mind is what the thing is. Like, the Reverend's gone and all that remains is the beast.
I feel like once, like, he's kind of doing the Lawrence Talbot desperate man thing, and then he gets shot in the eye with a firecracker, and that's when he gets pissed off. It's almost like that's your moment of change where he goes from desperation to psychotic because he got hurt.
Well, I mean, I guess.
I'm sure that pissed him off. It would piss me off.
I would be very upset.
But that, to me, I feel like is your point of change. It's like, okay, he's fighting it. You know, God has forsaken him to this horrible curse. And then all of a sudden, I want to kill some children because, fuck, I don't like having only one eye.
I did not see it that way, but
I mean, granted, they're antagonizing him by, and this was in the novella too, they're antagonizing him by writing him letters. Why don't you kill yourself?
I know.
How do you write one of those letters?
Like Corey Haim did. You do clippings and you just put them together.
I suppose so.
That's how you do it.
We feel now is the best time to tell you that Scarifyer are proud supporters of Rue Morgue. Rue Morgue is the world's leading horror and culture and entertainment brand, spearheaded by its multiple award-winning magazine, Rue Morgue and Rue Morgue Digital. But if reading is not your thing, that's okay, because there's Rue Morgue TV, the official YouTube channel, as well as Rue Morgue Cinema, which produced the acclaimed original film The Last Will and Testament of Rosalind Lee. So head over to RueMorgue.com and subscribe to Rue Morgue Magazine for your bi-monthly slice of horror culture and entertainment today.
All right. Gov.
Yeah.
I want to know. What's your opinion on this werewolf?
Funny you should ask. Actually, there's a lot of the backstory I left out.
I thought that sounded kind of short.
Because I wanted to spend some time and really talk about this.
Wow, we got a surprise, guys.
The design of the werewolf. First of all, let me just say this. How many people, and you can say it in the comments or whatever, was very disappointed that Gary Busey was not the werewolf?
I didn't.
You don't even need makeup. I would accept him as a werewolf, just crazy Gary Busey.
Gary Busey, okay.
So the design of the werewolf was very problematic for the production. So much so.
Our werewolf had a troubled past.
Yes. Did you know that there was a different director originally assigned to this film?
What?
And it was one Don Coscarelli. Phantasms Don Coscarelli.
No.
Yes, he was the original director. And they were in pre-production in the early to mid 80s for the film. And Stephen King was the one who wanted the design to be, I guess, plain
Like
or simple.
Simple?
Yeah,
Like simplify?
Yeah, I think he had a problem with the way werewolves were being depicted at the time. You got your howlings and your wolfins and your American werewolves and lions, very beast-like.
So he didn't like those like snarling jaws,
quadrupeds.
Yes, huge.
He wanted because he's a classic horror guy, so he probably wanted something more along the lines of your Wolfmans, stuff like that. He wanted a more simpler design. But the design that...
The problem is that was also the 1980s, so...
Well, the problem is the original design by Carlo Rambaldi, per King's request, made him look like a black bear or,
Yeah.
And you can see it in the film because that is the final design of the werewolf.
No, I can see that. He looks more like a bear or a cat. He doesn't even have any, like, really... dog characteristics in there or wolf characteristics in there.
It's really funny, the transitions of Reverend Lowe turning into the werewolf. Like, the transition effects are a much more convincing werewolf than the final wolf. It's so weird.
Getting there is the fun part, but the destination is kind of disappointing.
Apparently it was a big deal.
Anyone who's been to Vegas.
Apparently it was a big deal because Dino De Laurentiis, the producer, who's fucking Dino De Laurentiis, hated the design.
Really?
And both King and Rambaldi refused to change it.
Oh.
Don Coscarelli hated the design too. And he was kind of between a rock and a hard place, so he opted to start filming because pre-production was getting way behind schedule. So he opted to start filming like the non-werewolf scenes and then
film around it.
Yes, and then hope it would fix itself in the end. It didn't, and Coscarelli ended up resigning from the film.
Wow.
And Attias took over. So there so here we could have had a werewolf movie made by the great Don Coscarelli. Instead, we got a werewolf movie from a guy whose son was responsible for the 2001 Isla Vista vehicle killings. Look it up.
It explains a lot.
So I guess long story short,
Too late.
they didn't have time to change the design of the werewolf. So the original design that King wanted stuck.
Okay, so that's got to be kind of frustrating.
And that's
especially
why,
if you're the costume designer. I'm going to interrupt you for a second.
Sure.
Think about it. You're getting told to do this, and then it's changed to that, and then it's changed to this, and then it's like a tug of war match, and you're stuck in the middle going, okay, guys, what the fuck am I supposed to be doing?
And
That's got to be frustrating.
Absolutely. And I maintain the theory that's why you don't really see the werewolf.
No, I can believe
in
that
this
one.
film.
I can believe that 110%. You can especially see that when you're supposed to be having like a point of view look from the werewolf, because I mean, what else were they gonna do?
It's interesting because
And he's in shadows a lot.
well, that's what I was just about to say. They structured this almost like Jaws.
Yeah.
Where you get glimpses and you get teased by
We're
the
not
monster
ready
and stuff
yet.
like that. But whereas in Jaws, 10 years prior, it was a surprise when you saw the shark and how big it was.
Well, this kind of was a surprise, but it was the
not
opposite
the
end
same
of the spectrum.
surprise.
Well-
Didn't have the same effect. One of the reviewers of the films called it Smokey the Bear on a hangover, and I don't think I've ever heard it described as accurate as that.
Remember, only you can prevent forest fires.
Well, my thing that also gets me about this werewolf design is when they're looking through the bog or whatever it is, the swamp, whatever it is.
Yeah, the lynch mob scenes that's in all of these movies.
Of course, of course. Is when he drags the one guy down.
Yeah.
The guy with the baseball bat starts hitting him with the baseball bat. And then our werewolf turns around and starts hitting him with a baseball bat. And 2 points I'd like to make on that.
Well,
One,
not only once, but twice in the film does this werewolf bludgeon someone with a bat.
yeah, there's 2 different kills that are like this. I have never seen another werewolf do that.
No. Why?
You're
a werewolf. Why would you need...
One thing I would like to point out, when this werewolf raises its arm the first time with the bat, it looks like a goddamn gorilla arm.
Yeah.
Does anyone else notice that? Or Joan Rivers in a fur coat
Yeah.
about to bludgeon somebody. Mm-hmm. And again, werewolves are supposed to be like animals, okay?
Yeah.
So you're telling me an animal has the foresight to bring your arm up and bludgeon somebody.
You're a vicious creature from hell with, full-on claws and mouth full of razor-sharp teeth, and
You're supposed to bite and claw and you bludgeon somebody?
And you need a bat.
Who sent you to school for werewolf?
Honestly, the only thing I can think of to answer that is they had to set up the bat. Which I get.
But that's a weak way to do it. Why couldn't they have him grab it with his mouth?
They had to set up the bat as if you needed more proof that Reverend Lowe was the werewolf besides, one eye.
Yeah, but that could happen to anybody.
But Jane, I guess, needed more proof by this bat that she knows what bar it belongs to because it's a very small town. Even the children go into the bars.
And it's a custom bat. They, wrote on it.
Exactly. So you have that trigger to get you where you need to be, where you discover who's doing it and with what. I get that. Why do you have to do it twice? Because you don't have to do it twice. I think you were getting a little greedy with the whole bat thing because you're a werewolf. You don't need to hit somebody with a bat.
I can completely agree. It almost feels like, okay, we need him to do something, so let's just do that.
Like I said,
kind of like a last minute decision.
Like I said,
it kind of comes across sloppy.
It really does because again, it was a callback. It was a callback device, but you did that, so you certainly didn't need him to kill the sheriff with it later.
Yeah, no, that's almost too, like I was trying to say earlier, too human. Mm-hmm. That is a human reaction.
I like that they kind of, speaking of human reactions, I kind of like they stand a cliche on its head about how it has to be a full moon for one to turn into a werewolf. Because if you watch other werewolf films, it's like there's not many that full moons in a month, let alone it seems like a werewolf is turning every other day.
We don't have full moon like 3 times a week?
So exactly.
Bummer.
Man, the tidal waves. So I like the explanation of maybe he turns into a werewolf every night. It's just as the moon gets fuller, as Corey Haim says, the man gets wolfier.
No, that's exactly it.
So you can almost excuse a response of hitting somebody with a bat because maybe he was more human at the time.
Yeah.
Oh, great. I don't want to create explanation for stupid scenes, but I feel like I just created an explanation.
You did it.
I just defended a stupid scene.
Stupid!
Werewolf bashing aside, I want to get to what I really like about this film, which is it's a family film.
Yeah.
Not in a family film as in like you could take the kids to go see it. Please don't. That's not what I'm saying.
Spare your children.
I'm saying it's a film about a family.
Yeah.
And I like that. It almost has...
It's one of those few horror movies that are very heartwarming.
That's what Stephen King's very good at.
Yeah. And
this is something that was also really big at the time, spearheaded by one only Steven Spielberg. It almost kind of has a vibe of his films to it. And I really like the fact that our hero is a handicapped child.
Yes.
That's something.
But it doesn't stop him.
Exactly. It's not even a factor to him.
No.
It's almost like it's a factor to everyone else except him.
Exactly.
I love the scene between Red and his sister, which is Marty's mom, about, you got Red, who's kind of a reprobate. He's
Gary Busey.
He's Gary Busey. What can you say? So he's drinking wild turkey. He's smoking. He's cursing. He's crazy.
He's Gary Busey.
Exactly. But what I like about it is, her worries that he's going to give up. And Red's like, he's not going to give up. And her retort is, he doesn't need you showing him how to do it. I love that scene. Because that also goes to Red's character arc about doing what's right for his niece and nephew. He, all the way up to the end of the film, he knows this werewolf business is complete bullshit. But that's not what they need to hear. They need someone who believes.
He just needs support. They just need support.
Exactly.
That's the thing. And they know their parents won't believe him, so they turn to their uncle,
Yeah.
who at first is like, you guys are nuts. You guys are cracked. And then by the end of the film, he's like, you know what? I'll sit up with them just to make them feel better, even though he doesn't fully believe it.
Mm-hmm.
And then when shit literally does hit the fan, he is right there, trying to battle this with them.
He's their uncle. And
Yeah.
it shows that no matter what, he obviously has kind of a lower, not a lower life, but he
Kind of a bum.
he kind of a bum, he goes from girl to girl. He makes mention, he drinks excessively throughout the film and stuff like that. He's loudmouth, crazy, belligerent,
Yeah.
but he is completely dedicated to these kids.
Exactly. And
110%, especially Marty.
Yeah, that is such a beautiful part of this film. I like this film. I think it's a lot of fun.
I do too. And
All right, guys. So, as we're about to go ahead and rate this film, we want to hear what you liked about Silver Bullet. Get a hold of us on Twitter. Our handle is @ScarifyerPod. That's at SCARIFYERPOD. Give us a shout. Let us know what you thought of this film, or even give us your rating and why. So don't forget to find us on Twitter, okay? ScarifyerPod.
the Scarifyer scale is up 1 to 5. Go.
I'd give it a 4. A solid 4.
That's generous.
I know. I like it a lot. The only issues that I do have is, again, the werewolf is a little disappointing. I can respect the fact that he wanted something simple, but you didn't have to do it quite like that. So that was a little disappointing. Also, I was a little disappointed that there's not as much gore in it, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
So that brings it down a couple notches. It's almost like a soft-core horror film,
Yeah.
if you really want to think about it. So this would be good if you want to start introducing somebody into the horror genre, especially if they're kind of like squeamish or unsure. This is a good one to break them in with. So, but I like this movie. I enjoy watching it. It's something that I don't mind sitting down and revisiting, every once in a while. So, I'd give it a 4.
I mean, I think I'm along the same lines as you. I'm not going to be as generous, so I'm going to give a kind of a weird rating. I'm going to give it a 3.8.
I was close. I thought you were going to say 3.7.
And yeah, I'm going to give it a little bit more. I'll give it a 3.8 because it's definitely, in my opinion, better than a 3.5. Certainly better than a 3. But I don't know if it's going to hit that 4 for me yet. Mainly because of the werewolf. The werewolf really does take me out of it. And
I didn't realize it was that important.
Sometimes simpler is better.
Uh-huh.
But they could have gone even more simpler and it would have been more acceptable than the final product. If they did something akin to almost like a Jack Pierce callback to the original Universal films, whether it be The Wolfman or Werewolf of London, there's more man features than there is animal features, I would have accepted that way more than what we got, which is this weird black bear cat thing.
Care Bear's angry, drunken, coked up cousin.
Yeah, the film has a lot of good qualities. I don't know if lack of gore really bothers me, but there are moments of a lot of slow periods.
Yeah.
And sometimes scenes are contrived. The baseball bat. Also, the impeccable aim that Corey Haim has, where he shoots the werewolf twice in both eyes. It's at that point in the film, though, you do got to accept it and be like, okay.
His legs are paralyzed, not his sight.
So let him have it, I guess. But it is a movie that I do enjoy revisiting, especially around the Halloween season. And, I'll give it a solid 3.8. I like this one. In an age where a lot of Stephen King's work is being remade, I'm wondering why no one has taken a second look at Silver Bullet. maybe making another film more closer to the novel, maybe calling it Cycle of the Werewolf, like it was intended to be called, might be worth a go. I mean, I typically frown upon remakes, but I would like to see this one retold, I think. I think enough time has passed. It's certainly a movie that kind of gets positioned next to Christopher Walken's Dead Zone in terms of the forgotten Stephen King movies.
Yeah.
But, who knows? Maybe a updated reinterpretation of Silver Bullet will give it its own private justice. Alright, the Gov is going to tell you real quick how to bring the horror into your own home with a handmade soy wax candle from American Nightmare Candle Company. The scents are inspired by locations iconic to the horror genre, places like the Overlook Hotel, Sleepy Hollow, and Elm Street. Each fragrance combination is carefully curated to transport you into the story, and the catalog is ever evolving. So head over to Etsy or to AmericanNightmareCandles.com and get 10% off when you use the code Scarifyer at checkout. This deal only makes sense, so get your American Nightmare candle today.
Hey there, it's Quinn from Scarifyer. You ever have one of those days where you're out on the lake and the sun's going down, gazing into the eyes of that special someone, and then you realize, I brought my machete, but no hockey mask? Well, if you're in a rush to make a killing, head over to 13X Studios and get your very own custom hockey mask. Mask creator Rick Stizinski takes a hands-on approach to every order to create the perfect mask to your specialized needs. Why would you settle for red triangles when you can shop an assortment of original styles and colors? Rick's clientele includes Nightmare Toys, Kevin Smith, and Kane Hodder. Head online to follow 13X Studio on all social media platforms. Then go over to 13X Studios on Etsy to put in your custom order today. Don't get caught with your mask off while devising your next decapitation. Go to 13xstudios.com.
Scarifyer.